Good afternoon, old gun guy here. Welcome to today's video on the Remington Model 141 Gamemaster slide action rifle and the very fine 35 Remington cartridge it fires. I'm going to go into the cartridge first and then we'll go into the rifle in detail. The 35 Remington, this cartridge here, 35 caliber, 3 5/8 of an inch, developed in 1906 by Remington for their semi-automatic Model 8 rifle. It was the biggest of the Remington series of rimless cartridges. It says, modern rimless cartridge. There was four cartridges in the line. There was 25 Remington, 30 Remington, and 32 Remington. The 30 Remington was the basis for the modern 6.8 SPC cartridge, which is an interesting side note. The three Remington cartridges, 25, 30, and 32, were basically to compete with Winchester's 25-35, 30-30, and 32 Winchester Special cartridges, which all were rimmed cartridges. I have a 30-30 here for comparison, which survives to this day. You see it's much smaller. It's 30 caliber versus 35. It does have a rim and a smaller case capacity. I don't know if that comes through. There's a 35 Remington case, empty. You see the large opening in there for the 35 caliber bullet. The first three cartridges are completely obsolete and haven't been made in decades, many decades. The 35 Remington survives to this day. It's by itself. It's the first three cartridges of Remington were based on the same case. The 35 Remington is a much larger case, and the head diameter it's in its own class. It's 460 thousandths of an inch. The standard 308, 3006, and many other cartridges 473 thousandths. It has a very small shoulder, and it was designed to launch a big heavy bullet at moderate velocity at moderate pressure and have a lot of killing power for most game animals in the United States, and that it does. It accomplished the task quite well. It's very popular in anybody does hunting in heavily wooded areas. Not taking shots over 100 or 150 yards. It uses a 3 5/8 inch projectile. It operates at only 33,500 psi max chamber pressure, which is lower than a 357 handgun cartridge. It launches a 200 grain bullet at 2,100 feet a second for about 1,900 feet to 2,000 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. The traditional round nose 200 grain bullet is loaded by Federal, Winchester, and Remington. They do it in batches. This is becoming scarce this round because of, I guess, post-COVID, and people started hoarding things, and the prices of things have gotten ridiculous. I have two factory ammunitions here. The Hornady Lever Evolution, that's how they say it. 35 Remington 200 grain FTX projectile, which would be this. It's a pointed projectile, a lot more ballistically, higher ballistic coefficient. These round nose projectiles, slow down quicker than a pointed projectile that cuts through the air much more efficiently. Sorry for the clock. I'm actually going to have to stop it. Before I get lost here. The 35 Remington survives to this day. It's a much better hunting or cartridge, a lot more killing power than a 30-30. 30-30 is a fine cartridge. This one's a little bit better. Launches bigger, heavier, large diameter projectile with more energy. It's popular for deer and black bear. It's probably 1 million or 1.5 million rifles exist in .35 Remington, and I believe they're still being manufactured today. Some of the Midwestern states require a straight wall rifle cartridge to go deer hunting. So I think you see the advent of 2 cartridges basically trying to duplicate the .35 Remington, the 360 Buckhammer and the 350 Legend, Winchester. Basically, they're duplicating or trying to duplicate this fine old cartridge. Been around for 118 years. It's been chambered in many rifles, bolt actions, slide actions. This Remington Gamemaster is a slide action or pump action rifle. The semi-automatics, pistols, hunting pistols, Thompson Senate contender pistols. Other manufacturers, Magnum Research had a Lone Eagle, a single shot pistol, chambered in that, one of the calibers. Single shot rifles. It's a very useful cartridge within its parameters. It's basically designed as a woods, hunting cartridge for ranges up to 150 yards. Where I shoot in my backyard, basically, at heavy woods, you'd be lucky to get a shot at a deer at 100 yards, in the cover there. And that's a lot of woods hunting, and it excels at that. You don't want to, you need a big, powerful, long-range cartridge beating you up. Can you use it for larger game? I'm sure you could. I think the native tribes up in Canada, the Inuit, they hunt moose and caribou with 30-30s. I think also the 303 British, because they have some of them knocking around up there. Whatever you can shoot with a 30-30, does it get a better punch to it? The Hornady lever evolution projectiles really revolutionized the lever action rifle cartridges. And obviously this has a tubular magazine, but it's specially designed so you could use pointed bullets that are not flex tips. This has a flexible polymer tip, so you wouldn't get a chain detonation of cartridges in a magazine. That's why round nose, flat nose bullets have always been loaded in the lever action type cartridges. When I go into the rifle, there's a design feature that allows you to use standard pointed projectiles in this firearm without danger of, it's a rare occurrence that causes a chain detonation in a tube magazine, but who wants to take the chance? The higher ballistic coefficient in this cartridge really stretches the point blank range out of the .35 Remington from out to about 230 yards, and it flies a lot flatter than the round nose. If you sight this in at 200 yards on the button, it'll never deviate from the line of sight to 230 yards, point of aim, point of impact, either 3.6 inches high or 3.6 inches low. Basically, well within a kill zone of an average deer. The 150, obviously, no, it kind of drops like a rock. You're at basically the end of its reach. It's got a more rainbow-like trajectory at 150 yards. At 300 yards, this 200 grain bullet retains 500 foot-pounds of energy. At 300 yards, the Hornady FTX retains 1,050 foot-pounds of energy at 300 yards. Could you take a 300-yard shot with this? Yes, it's not recommended. If you have it zeroed in at 200, to drop at 300 is 15 inches. So I guess you could hold it broadside on the back of a game animal and hit low chest. But it just extends the reach. Adding to the versatility is if you do hand load, and I do hand load, I'll be using my hand loads with this projectile and with Hornady's round nose, 200 grain soft point. And some of the tests, I'll use for the chronograph. I'll fire, because these things are getting the factory rounds are getting hard to find, and we do find them expensive. Local guns shop wants $70 a box for Remington. I don't know if you can see the price on this. It's $30, no, $30.99 I paid for it maybe 5 years ago, and maybe $32 for this. It just kind of, the ammunition's crazy, the components, and I think there's a little hoarding going on. People, you know, have a 35 Remington. I can't get ammunition. You know, I buy in and put everything I buy up. Since I have a lot of cases, I reload and I have several rifles in 35 Remington. I have, you know, ample supplies to keep them fed if I was going to shoot them on a regular basis, which I don't. I haven't shot this gun probably in 4 or 5 years. I didn't buy it to go hunting. I got a. I happened to walk around a gun show, and one of the dealers had, you know, he must have bought an estate. Someone died. He had this on the table, and I purchased it. I got a real good price too. It was only about maybe $350, $400, $350 maybe. And that's a fine rifle, and we'll go into the rifle in a minute. The paper ballistics, the old rule of thumb with you know, hunting cartridges, when the projectile strikes whatever game animal, a deer is usually, you need 1,000 foot-pounds of energy, or that's recommended, and an elk would need 1,500 pounds of foot-pounds of energy. This Lever Revolution maintains 1,500 foot-pounds to about 200 yards, and 1,050 foot-pounds to 300 yards. Like I said, you could stretch it out to about 225 yards, 230 yards, maximum point-blank range if you zero it at 200. Obviously, if you zero the rifle at 100, and these two ammunitions have probably 6-inch difference in point of impact. So you have to sight your rifle for whatever ammunition you're going to use. Hornady makes 35 Remington, Federal, and I believe Winchester's still loading it. Like I said, there's probably 1 million or 1.5 million rifles in existence, lever actions and slide action, semi-autos, pumps. Well, we're going to go into this 141 Gamemaster. The original rifles, the Remington Model 14, came out in 1912. It was designed by John Pedersen, who worked for Remington and then later the United States government. He designed quite a few firearms for Remington, and their only pistol, the Model 51, the semi-auto pistol. Remington wanted a competitor to the very popular Winchester 94 lever action rifles and the 1892 pistol caliber lever action rifles. So Pedersen set to work and developed the slide action, which is slide action is very fast to use in a hunting gun, you know, manually operated, like a lever action. You can operate a lever action fast if you have practice with it. Same thing with this. Very innovative design, a lot of features. The 14 was made in 4 calibers. The 25 Remington, which competed with which was a competition for the 25-35 Winchester. The 30 Remington, which is basically a rimless 30-30, and the loading data can be used the same. The 32 Winchester Special was the 32 Remington, rimless cartridge, both obsolete. There's still some 32 Winchesters, you know, floating around, lever guns, and the 35 Remington, the chambered for it. They're all moderate pressure cartridges. A modern 308 or 3006 operates almost twice the pressure it is, so the Magnum's definitely over twice the pressure, you know, 65,000 psi. The moderate pressure, and the design, the action design was designed for modest pressure cartridges. 1912 to 1936, I think, the Model 14, and then they made a few manufacturing changes, not to the mechanism or the rifle itself. Mechanically, this is identical to the Model 14. Function, parts, Nothing was changed. They made some minor changes to the stock, and I think the sights. Now it's got a standard, Remington, tang sight. Not tang sight. The ramp sight, adjustable ramp. You could elevate it. Get the similar type sight on a Winchester 94 rifle, but the design is to compete with that. Like I said, this one I have here, I'm going to give you a close-up, but this is a 141. Came out in 36, was manufactured till 1950. This particular one, according to the barrel code, CSS, stamped on the upper left side of the barrel, right here. We placed it in April 1947, this was made. And they stopped making these in 1950. The 141 was only made in 3 calibers, 30 Remington, 32, and the 35. The 25 was dropped from the 141. The Model 14 had that caliber. They made minor changes to the stock and the foregrip and some other, but nothing mechanically. They're identical. So basically, the rifle was in production 38 years, one form or another. The 141s, they made carbine ones with 18-inch barrels. This has a 24-inch barrel, which is going to stretch every little ounce of velocity out of the 35 Remington. Basically, you really don't need a barrel over 20 inches for a 35 Remington, but longer barrel carries well. It's not really a heavy rifle, but it's a nice rifle. I'm going to give you a close-up of the rifle. I'm going to take the camera off the stand and bring it in for a close-up. Alright, this camera switched into black and white for some reason. Obviously, a muzzle, 35 caliber bullet. You got a nice bluing all the way down the rifle. This is the magazine tube. It's fixed to the slide, and I'll demonstrate that. I'll have to put it on a tripod to do that. But the fore-end and magazine tube move back and forth. Delivers the cartridges into the receiver. It doesn't pop them out like a 12-gauge shotgun. I'm going to cut that out. All right, the magazine tube is got these helical or spiral cut grooves, and the purpose of that is to tilt the cartridges so they won't. The pointed tip of a Spitzer bullet will not be touching the primer of the cartridge in front of it. So you can use Spitzer bullets in this design. As we come back here, we have the Remington Gamemaster logo, and they have a 35 caliber cartridge case head embossed into the receiver. It also kind of serves as a loaded chamber indicator, or a chamber indicator that the action is closed. In that, if you pick the gun up and the chamber is open, the breech is open, you can see straight through it. You can see light right through there. Now if I close the action, now you get, if you look, you can't. I don't know if it'll show up on the camera, but you can't see the bolt, but it has the stamping there, 35 Remington, and obviously on the barrel 35 Remington, and the date code. This is the loading port underneath. It's kind of strange. You push the nose of the projectile into the follower, and then push it forward, and then sit it on a little shelf there, and put the other cartridge behind it. It holds 5 cartridges, right? The magazine, and the receiver is milled steel from a single block of steel. It's really well built because the bolt locks into the receiver, not into a barrel extension like a lot of modern firearms, which are a lot cheaper to produce. Come back to the trigger. Obviously the buttstock, some plain walnut, sling swivel, the Remington butt pad. All right, This is the takedown screw. And I'll go into that in a second, but I'll flip this over. And obviously we have an optic on here. This probably dates from the 50s. This is a Weaver 3-power scope with a German post. It has a horizontal crosshair and a thick post that meets the crosshair. But it's not really, it's only like 3/4 of a crosshair. It's on these high mounts that are see-through, so you can look under the scope. Let's see if this will, and see through to the sights below it. It's kind of a high mount, and like I said, the scope is, someone probably put it on the 50s after they bought this rifle. This is the breech block, the bolt. Bolt release on these guns is this button here. You gotta push it in. I'll have to do it on a tripod because I won't be able to do it with two hands. I need two hands to do it. The magazine tube moves back and forth with the fore end. You got the trigger, and you have a safety, basically a trigger block safety behind the trigger, kind of like the Remington 870 shotguns. And beautiful machining, beautiful workmanship of these old guns. That's why I have an affinity for these old guns. I'm gonna put this on a tripod, and I'll show you how the gun gets taken down in cycles. Let me get back. Get the sun coming in here. Like I said, you got to push this button in to release the bolt, and it goes back and forth. If you can see, the magazine tube goes back and forth. Very strange. When you lock it, the only way obviously is you can pull the trigger, unlock it like a shotgun, or hit the bolt release, which is here. I don't know if it's going to show up. But you see the bolt camming up and down? It locks into the top of the receiver here. There's like a bulge up here, machine recess in there, and that's where the bolt locks up. And with the relatively low pressure cartridges, the 35 Remington, it's more than strong enough for its designed use. It's as fast a cycle as pump action shotgun. All the guns in the late part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, a lot of them were takedown guns. It means they broke into smaller packages to put in a smaller case that you can carry on a train. Obviously, even in the early 20th century, most people, when they traveled any distance, was on a train. The automobile was a rich man's toy, 1910, 1915, until Henry Ford, came out with the Model T, and people started buying cars, but then you didn't have really good roads to ride them on, so a lot of people traveled via train, and you don't want to be toting around a big long rifle. So basically, on the Model 14, the takedown, a lot of the Remington and Winchester rifles of the period and shotguns break down. But you unscrew this big screw here, pull it out, and then you can separate. Put the bolt forward, sorry. And you separate the two halves, put in a smaller case. If this was an 18-inch carbine, the barrel would be here. It would probably fit in the same case. There's your trigger mechanism. There's your breech block and your magazine tube under there. I believe you can still cycle it with the action. Yeah. You see the magazine tube, the whole breech block, and the whole action going back. To put this back together, it just slides into the dovetail all the way down. Push the pin in, tighten the screw, and that's it. It's all back together. To clean this rifle, obviously you break that apart, and there's only a couple of screws you got to remove. I'm going to clean this after I do the shooting tests. Maybe I'll make a separate video on cleaning it, but it's really not hard to take apart. Basically, you have a little screw here at the end of the magazine tube. You hold the end of this cap, get a gunsmith screwdriver, remove this screw, and then carefully let the spring pressure on the magazine tube come out. Pull the spring out, the follower will be attached. You have 2 screws on the slide, the wooden slide grip, one on each side. You take them off, and then you got one more screw. I have to point with the pointing bullet right here, where the receiver meets the barrel. There's a little metal piece that comes out when you take that screw out, and another metal bar about that long. And then with the trigger assembly off the gun, you can then slide the wooden foregrip off the magazine. The magazine tube and the whole breech block assembly will come out the back of the gun, and then you clean it. If you should inherit one of these, you have a very useful rifle for hunting. Obviously, if you're going to use this for home defense, it's going to be effective. But any rifle round you fire at a human, it's going to go completely through them, including a 35 Remington or even a 30-30. So you got to know your backstop if you're in some dire desperation to some dire situation. Interesting. To build this today, it probably cost a fortune. Just all the machining involved. Everything's milled. Have a solid block of steel. The way you have to attach the barrel, thread it in, time it. It's just really nice how old American craftsmanship is, including this Weaver scope and the mounts that go with it. The scope is ancient. I zeroed it in when I first got this gun. Like I said, I shoot it occasionally. I don't hunt with it. I just bought it because I liked it. That's all. And it's a nice old piece of history. And it's nice to shoot once in a while. And we're going to do that. We're going to put it towards paces. We're going to go through the shooting tests. Comparative recoil with a 223 bolt gun. The ballistic pendulums, where we shoot the 8-inch steel plates, 223, 35 Remington. Chronograph, I'm going to shoot both the factory and my hand loads. Do an accuracy test at 100 yards with the little scope off the bench. And it doesn't have much magnification, but it's good enough for 150 yard deer hunting, that's for sure. A wide field of view with a low power, low magnification. Now, even with say there's a 25mm objective, you only get 3 power, so the exit pupil, the amount of light coming out, is greater than 7mm. That's bigger than your eye, a young eye can see. The older you get, you can see about 5mm of light. So the math is objective diameter divided by the power, exit pupil. So 25 divided by 3, you get 8+ exit pupil, more than your eye can see. So it's plenty bright enough. But that's a basic formula there. Do a terminal effects test. If I got enough water jugs, I'll do one with the FTX projectile and one with the traditional 200 grain round nose, and see if we can capture the bullet and see what kind of damage it does. And with that, we'll go outside to the shooting demo. A ton of bugs out today, and because it's been raining, but nice and sunny today, and they all come out, and I'm sure that'll be pleasant. So let's go to the shoot. All right, we're going to do our chronograph test. I'm outside here. I'm going to take only a shot each with the factory ammo. I got a Remington 200 grain core lock. What a price, $30. Not anymore. 60 or 70 if you can find it. 200 grain core lock, round nose saw point, and the Hornady Lever Revolution 200 grain FTX projectile, streamlined pointed projectile. On the box it says 2,225 feet a second. So the first up will be the Hornady, and then I'll follow with the factory Remington. and I'm going to write them on the boxes because I've never chronographed them. And let me get set up on the chronograph, and we'll be right back. Okay, the first shot's going to be one of the FTX, followed by the factory Remington 200 grain. So I'm going to load the Remington in first. That ain't going to work. Just do the Remington. $21.88 for the Remington. Now the factory FTX. $21.49. Okay, next up, two of my hand loads with the FTX projectile, 200 grain Horny. And now, two of my 200 grain round nose, these are Hornady projectiles, round nose soft point, 200 grain. I don't know if the camera will show this. We gotta get it started. And then push it all the way in, and they'll go back into the action. And there we have it for our chronograph results. 6 rounds. Only two of them are factory. The other 4 were hand loads. And I'll go into that in a summary. The velocity, energy expected, and performance. The first shot's going to be one of the FTX, followed by the factory Remington 200 grain. So I'm going to load the Remington in first. That ain't gonna work. Just do the Remington. $21.88 for the Remington. Now the factory FTX. $21.49. Okay, next up, two of my hand loads with the FTX projectile. Okay, the comparative recoil test. First up, a 223 bolt gun, 24-inch barrel, Savage, 55 grain 223. Nothing. Let me get the Remington. To get 200 grain Remington soft point in this rifle, factory load. I'll be burning up my FTX stuff. As you can see, negligible. Okay, I'm going to do my ballistic pendulum test here. 8-inch AR 500 steel plates. Shoot the center plate with 223 Remington at a 24-inch Savage and a 24-inch barrel Remington 141 Gamemaster, 35 Remington on the right plate. And we go get the rifles and zoom in on the targets. Alright, I got both rifles with me. I'm going to go back about 15 yards and center plate 223, right plate 35 Remington. And a lot more energy imparted, obviously, with the 35 Remington. .223 damaged the plate this time. That's strange. Next up, terminal effects test. I just did a couple of sighting shots, so I haven't shot this rifle for a while. I just want to make sure which ammunition was zeroed. It's zeroed to the 200 grain Hornady FTX projectile. 200 grain, it's got a flex pointed tip, streamlined bullet. And I fired two Remington 200 grain round nose saw point factory ammunition. And I'll zoom in on it. I'm going to cover up the holes with tape, so I don't have to get on the target. All right, let's come in closer and zoom in. Back that out a little. All right. I'll point to them as I tape it up. If you look, those are the two FTX. It's one MLA there with them two shots. And the Remington's off center. I was actually shooting at the bottom right target. It's high and right, 2 inches up and 2 inches right. You have to zero every gun with the ammo you're going to use. And I zeroed this with the FTX because just a better projectile. Let's see if I can tilt this. Get this down a little bit. It's a little hard setting up, and then that's driving me crazy. Alright, I'm going to tape the bullet holes up and go back and shoot a group at the center dot. This will be the aiming point, and I'll use the FTX projectiles. Tape on there. shoot a group of 100 with the Hornady FTX projectiles with the flex tip spire point. Get the first round in there. Second. Third. Alright, she's loaded. Put my ears on. You can see the recoil off the bench. I'm going to do 4 shots because this stuff's getting scarce. Okay, I'm going to take a shot with the 200 grain Hornady 35 Remington FTX at 220 yards. I'm going to zoom in as best I can on that plate. This is the very last one. Okay. And 220, no problem. Okay, now for the 100-yard grouping test. Hornady FTX projectiles. You shoot at the center dot. That's an interesting result. It's a good group, not to the point of aim. Not to the point of aim. I was just messing around with it, and I just suspect the front scope mount was slightly loose, but shows you the mechanical accuracy of the rifle. Anyway, let's go back to the other tests. Okay, we're on a terminal effects target. If I have enough jugs and if I'm lucky to capture the projectiles, I'll try 2 shots. But the first one's going to be the Hornady 200 grain FTX projectile. That would be that 35 Remington in comparison to the traditional Remington 200 grain round nose soft point. And if I have enough jugs that survive, I'll do a shot with this. Let me set it up on the target, put my ears on, and get to shooting. And I forgot to explain, I'm zoomed in anyway on the target. 6 inches of water, 3/4 inch piece of plywood to simulate bone, second jug 6 inches of water, another piece of plywood here, third jug of water. This is just a witness piece of thin cardboard, fourth jug, these are pine boards, 3/4 inch thick. Couple of jugs. We're lucky we'll capture the projectile, and we'll go into that in the summary. Turn my other camera on and make sure we're good to go. Okay, we're going to set it up and try the soft point. Flip jug number 3. Blew up 1 and 2. They're destroyed. The bullet fragments. A lot of energy departed. Caught the side of the piece of plywood and destroyed that. I do have enough water jugs for another test, so let me set this up. Alright, set it up again. I'm just going to mark them quick. I'm going to try the 200 grain soft point. I wasn't able to capture the projectile, the Hornady. It flew off to the right. We'll go through that in the summary. I don't think I captured the other projectile either. Destroyed 2 more jugs. And blew up the... Okay, my second test, I was able to capture a projectile. Bring the camera up to the target and look at it. Okay. However, see, it destroyed that jug. You can see the bullet hole going in the second one, right there. After it destroyed the jug, it went completely through this chunk of plywood. That was the first piece of plywood, and it's lodged in the second piece of plywood, the 200 grain round nose. So I'll dig that out of that piece of plywood. The FTX, by the time it hit the third jug, it was veering off to the right, and it just ripped this apart here. And there's nothing in there, not even fragments. So that'll be it for our terminal effects test. Okay, I'm back for the summary. We did our shooting tests and some interesting results. The 141 Remington Gamemaster, a very fine rifle. It was superseded by the Remington 760, different design, and it was designed to handle high pressure cartridges. The first iteration had a rotating multi-lugged bolt that locked into the, I believe, a barrel extension, or possibly in the receiver, I forget, but it was designed for high pressure cartridges, 308, 3006, 6mm Remington, there's quite a few, and the 35 Remington, but that's what came after this. This was, they couldn't make this profitably anymore after 1950. Just too much hand fitting and machine work involved. The fine 35 Remington cartridge is a very powerful short range hunting cartridge for deer, black bear. I guess if you're in heavy woods, caribou, moose. Moose are very tough animals, but like I said, the Canadian Indians hunt them with 30-30s, which are a lot less powerful. It's putting a ton of muzzle energy out from the factory loads and my hand loads at the muzzle. We did our chronograph tests. The one camera was a little hinky, but I was able to get all the data on the chronograph, and I have them results here. The Remington factory load with the 200 grain jacketed round nose exposed lead projectile left the muzzle at 2188. That is 24-inch barrel. Pretty much standard is 20-inch, any type of lever gun, but this is a little bit longer, and that translates to 2,126 foot-pounds of energy. That would be this box here, the factory box, green and yellow. Next up was the Remington FTX. The Hornady FTX. It's got a polymer. It's a pointed spire point projectile with a polymer tip on it. It's got a better ballistic coefficient. The box says 2225. Even at this 24-inch barrel, I've shot it before. It's 2149 here, but I've gotten 2150, 2160, right around there as this long barrel gun. The energy translates to 2,059 foot-pounds of energy. I don't know if that comes up on the screen. That's all the data. Then I shot my hand loads. FTX projectile, same as a Hornady. The velocity was 2,124 feet a second with 2,004 foot-pounds of energy. Then I had the Hornady 200 grain jacketed round nose exposed lead tip projectile, very similar to this Remington here. Velocity was 2,071 and energy foot-pounds was 1,905 foot-pounds of energy. A good amount of power. If you hand load, and all hand loads should be approached with caution. It's a hazardous hobby if you don't pay close attention to what you're doing. But I give you my loads for the 35 Remington. Loaded them 4 years ago. 200 grain Hornady FTX projectile. Winchester 748 powder. That would be for this load here. 41.1 grains. I actually have a CCI military primer in this because I guess I ran out. And it says on the box 2,020 feet a second of this load. Might have tested that in a Marlin. I got a Marlin with a 20-inch barrel. All hand loads, you should start a little lower than that, a couple of grains lower. Test it in your rifle. Obviously, changing components around could change the pressures a little bit, but it was entirely safe in actually all my 35 Remingtons. And it comes from one of the well-known reloading manuals. That's where I get all my data to start with. This 200 grain Hornady FTX with the Lever Revolution powder, 41.4 grains. Same thing, CCI military primer. I got it listed as 2,025 feet a second. I think I got pretty close to that with the, I exceeded it. Yes. So, about 100 feet a second, but that's out of this 24-inch barrel. I think all the velocities I tested them in was in my 20-inch barrel Marlin. We went to the accuracy test, and I had some interesting issues there. It shot tight groups, but not the point of aim, and the point of aim shifted, and it shifted between the two ammos. My first problem I found, these thumb screws here, just tighten with a screwdriver on this Hornady mount, Weaver mount, big see-through rings, they're slightly loose. So I tightened it up and I shot a second group with just a Hornady factory FTX ammo. And that shot a nice group and one was way off, but it wasn't the point of aim. I suspect this old scope, the reticle is moving around internally due to age. Sometimes it happens. But the scope appears fine, but I suspect that's it. Everything else in the rifle's tight. When I let the shots go, I usually tell when I pull a shot, and they all felt good. They felt they were on the center aiming point when I let it go. I have the target here. The two papers are superimposed. This was the Hornady factory. That was the aiming point. I shot a we'll just edit that out, that's all. Alright, back to the target. This was the factory Hornady ammunition on my reloads this year. This was the aiming point. One shot was here, the other three up here. There's something strange going on there. I think it's the scope. I believe it's the scope. And or the mount. There was a slight little bit of wiggle, and I tightened it up as hard as I could. If I would actually go hunting, I think I'd have to change the scope and use something else with this gun. But like I said, I haven't shot it in a while. But I like to put the good and the bad and the ugly on there. I just stapled this target over the first target that I shot. And this was off camera. This was 2 shots. That was the aiming point. I believe I zeroed it at 200 with this ammunition, but that was off camera, and so were these Remingtons. They printed over here, way off the point of aim. And then I fired the group. It vexed me. This is the point of aim, and it was going all over the place. So I don't know what's going on with that. I have to investigate further. But you can see it does mechanically move good. And I believe the internals of the scope are jumping around. Sometimes it's on the first shot and it jumps off and then it must lock up again. And so it's the same point of aim, even though the point of impact's shifted. That's what I figured what's going on with that. I did fire an FTX projectile at 220 yards. You saw it hit the plate. It's in the video there. Bing, no problem. If I was doing it with this, I'd have to hold about, I don't know, a foot over the plate. And then it's a little bit of luck to lob it into it. But this is pretty much on the money. Like I said, it extends the useful range of the 35 Remington 80 to maybe 100 yards, 150 to say 230, 140 to 230. We did the comparative recoil test. The recoil on this is mild, not bad. It's got a plastic butt plate. I don't know if you can see the Remington logo on that, but there's no recoil pad per se. The only thing modern in this gun is this carry strap I threw on this, I had laying around just to carry in the woods. We did the comparative recoil with the 223, no problem. 223 is non-existent out of the bolt gun. That's a 24-inch barrel. Shot a hand load out of that, and I clocked it before out of the barrel at 3,400 feet a second out of the Savage. I was surprised. It put a dimple, a ding in a plate, a shallow, I don't know, quarter of an inch into the. They should never do that with a 500. I've shot 300 magnums, everything like that, and for some reason, put a, damaged the plate actually. The 35 Remington, shot the plate next to it. Obviously, a lot more energy imparted, much bigger bullet. Internal effects test. Did the first one with the FTX projectile, horny round, and blew the first jug up. Caught this piece of plywood at the edge and destroyed that. Destroyed the second water jug. It was traveling up. It missed the other piece of plywood I had kind of laying sideways, and it went over that, and it just clipped the third water jug as it went off to the right and missed the rest of the jugs. Obviously, a lot of energy imparted, vaporized the water jugs. I was then able to shoot this end of jugs left, so I shot the 200 grain Remington load, factory load. Big round salt point. Destroyed the first jug. Initially, if you see on the tape there, I thought I didn't recover the projectile, but I did. A 6-inch water jug, 3/4 inch piece of plywood, another water jug, another 3/4 inch piece of plywood, another jug, so forth. I've used this several times. That's why this is marked like that. That was previously used. This is the 35 Remington that went through. The 200 grain went blowing through that and blew the shit out of the plywood. And that was the first piece. Blew the second water jug up, and the second piece, which I reused, it embedded itself into this board, into the 3/4 inch piece of plywood. And I didn't see that until after, and I did a little brief addendum on that. At the terminal effects thing. I started digging this out with a knife, so it's pretty loose now. I think I can get it out of there, and we'll see it. Oh, yeah, I dug it out. Here we have it, a nicely mushroomed it's 200 grain Remington round nose saw point. Probably expanded, I'm going to say 70 caliber. There's a chunk of plywood in one part of the jacket. Held the jacket, held together pretty good. Expanded nicely. So whichever round you choose, they're both good rounds. You get a little more range with the FTX due to the higher ballistic coefficient. That just means that it's much more slippery through air, so it sheds velocity at a slower rate than a blunt round nose projectile. So hence its trajectory will be flatter. It will not be as arced, and it loses velocity more slowly, so it retains velocity out to further ranges. At 300 yards, still got 1,000 foot-pounds energy. I think it's doing about 1,500 feet per second, 1,550. And the round nose at that range is slowed down. It's only got 500 foot-pounds energy, half the energy. That's just from the ballistic shape. So we did the function, the recoil, included the shooting off the bench, which any rifle you can shoot off the bench is going to recoil more than when you're holding it normally, like off your shoulder, you know, offhand. Even off the bench, it ain't bad. Yeah. Awkward position I'm in there. I had it on the tip of my shoulder here because I didn't want to get the rifle too high, and it's wiggling all over the place. It's a fine cartridge. If you acquire one of these or inherit one of these, if you acquire one of these to go hunting, you're a woods hunter, you're well served by it. Very fast action. I didn't want to spew the brass and lose it because things are getting hard to find these days, and I don't want to lose my brass. Obviously, if I was in the woods hunting with it, I wouldn't care about that. But so I was, slow, cycling, taking the brass out in my hand. But you can cycle this very quickly, like a 12-gauge shotgun. Probably faster than a lever gun, and stay on target because your hand position really doesn't change. You're just moving your offhand, not your firing hand, with a lever. So well designed, beautiful gun. Obviously, its primary use is a hunting tool. If you are a hand loader, you can load 38 caliber pistol projectiles in these cases. All the loading manuals, and most of them have data with the pistol projectiles. 158 grain 357 jacketed projectiles, jacketed saw points. They make a good varmint round, something 50 yards away. It's going to destroy a lot of meat because pistol bullets driven at rifle velocity just come apart like little hand grenades. But you get a lighter recoil on the load, and you can use it for coyote. You got a coyote attacking your chickens or something. You put a couple of them in there, and you're good to go. You'll put the coyote down real quick. That's a little bit of versatility. If you're good to use it for home defense, if you're only got one gun, one rifle, one firearm, and you get an intruder in your house and you have to defend yourself, the pistol projectiles, provided they cycle through your gun fine. Some guns might not cycle them good. If you use the regular rifle rounds, yes, good. It'll be a good man stopper. But it's going to blow right through a human. So you gotta, if you're going to set up your Alamo position where you're hiding in your room, if they bust into your room, just make sure that your firing lane, it's got plenty of backstop in the house. It's not towards another room or where innocent family members might be in another bedroom, because it'll blow through the bad guy and through the walls. God forbid you got to use it like that. What else can we say? This cartridge has been around for 120 years for good reason. It's still useful today. Everything, America, everyone likes to build a better mousetrap, and it's people constantly innovating, which is a good thing. And but sometimes the old things are useful throughout the ages. And the 35 Remington is one of them cartridges. Like I said, for short range hunting, 150 yards or less, perfect woods gun. Easy to carry. Point's pretty easy. Like I said, I think there's something going on with the scope. So, like I said, if I had to do anything more than just plink in the yard with it, or just actually go hunt, I'd swap the scope out and then zero the gun in and go hunting that way. With that, that'll be my finale here for the Remington Gamemaster Model 141 slide action rifle, designed by John Pedersen. Been around since 1906. This example is 77 years old. This was made in 1947, post World War II. They started making civilian firearms again. And the very fine 35 Remington cartridge, which is in probably 1 million or 2 rifles floating around the United States. Lever guns and Marlin lever guns and bolt action guns and semi-auto rifles and break open rifles and single shot rifles and slide action rifles. The Remington 760, 7600, the slide actions that followed this were Remington. But very good weapon. With that, that's it for my Remington Gamemaster 141 35 caliber Remington rifle and 35 caliber Remington cartridge video. Good evening.